Welcome to CallumConnects, 5-minute entrepreneurial inspiration for your day. Joining us today on CallumConnects is our guest, Damon Burton. Damon is a Forbes contributor, president of SEO National, author of search engine optimization book Outrank, and husband and father of 3.
A hurdle I faced as an entrepreneur is embracing the concept of scaling quicker. I think all of us know that delegation is important, but until you reach a certain wall and are forced to decide if you are going to give away more responsibilities or not, it's really hard to actually proceed. Like, we know the concept, but until you have that growing pain, it's hard to let go of some of those things. So a couple years ago, well, probably about 10 years ago at this point, I reached a point where we were growing and it was all the good problems that you have as an entrepreneur. And I realized that I needed to bring on more team members. And so at one point, it was kind of like the perfect storm where I was listening on audiobook to E-Myth Revisited and also 4-Hour Workweek. If you're not familiar with what those books are, E-Myth Revisited basically teaches you the concept of making your business dependent on processes instead of employees. So you can still have great employees, but as employees may come and go, then you can potentially lose and gain different skill sets. If you build your company to be based on processes, then as the company evolves, you always have that guaranteed quality control. And 4-Hour Workweek teaches you how to streamline processes and delegate and outsource. But I felt that it was important not to delegate until you had your processes built, because if you don't foolproof your processes and find the tiny little gaps and opportunities to cut corners, then it's human nature that your team may find those little loopholes. So your delegation, your team members, your VAs, whatever it is, whoever you delegate responsibilities to, they are going to be as good or as bad as the documentation that you provide. So what I learned was, in the infancy of my company, I had a handful of VAs, and I finally said, why don't I have more? Why don't I have more team members? Why don't I hire more staff? Why don't I have more VAs? And within the course of a couple months after listening to those 2 books, I went from 2 or 3 team members to, a dozen. And the beauty was that having gone through the growing pains before that, then I knew exactly what we needed. So it was perfect timing. But let's be honest, documenting processes sucked, because on top of running your business, on top of, in my case, being a husband, being a father, doing all the normal things that you still do, I had to work in an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a day of documenting processes for probably a year. Because if I was going to document our processes, I didn't want to have to do it again. I wanted it to be perfect, with the exception of having to make minor updates here and there. So I really sat down and documented every possible variation of every process and did it myself. But now that was the best thing ever, because fast forward and we had a huge international real estate company come in, we get boarded as a client. First of all, I wouldn't have felt comfortable bidding on the project if I didn't have our processes documented. And even if we did get the contract without the processes documented, it would have been impossible to fulfill. And since then, we've gone on to do big contracts with bigger companies, billion-dollar companies, NBA teams, all these amazing things that we couldn't have done if we didn't document processes formally. I had processes in my head, some were on spreadsheets, some were over here, some were over there, but really embracing the concept of formally documenting processes will revolutionize your business.
The biggest hurdle I faced was when the company my partner and I built from scratch came under attack and more than $250 million of value was destroyed. If you would like to learn more about that and how I came back from it, sign up at callumlane.com.